Hi, I'm Julieanna Hever, and today I'm really excited to introduce to you a very good friend of mine and a man I consider a guru in fitness and beyond. His name is Kappel LeRoy Clarke, and he is the inventor, the creator of the system called FRE FLO DO, and he is the founder of the new company called Performance Minded. And this man takes fitness to an entirely new level. And I'm really excited to have you here today and talk about what you're doing, what you're currently doing. And he just did this incredible feat of fitness, and he actually set a record. And there's a difference between breaking a record and setting a record, because I thought it was you broke a record, but can you explain?
Well, the difference basically is breaking a record would imply that someone's done it before, and the person's attempting to do it better in some way, what time or speed or what have you. And this event that I did do it once before, back in 2010, with a smaller weight, with a lighter weight rather, same distance. But that was 2010.
That's so 2010.
That's old news, right? Because this growth is moving forward.
Right.
So this past Sunday, July 14th, 2013, I basically set out to and was successful in completing the goal of lifting and throwing in a very explosive dynamic move. Basically, it's a lift, kind of a flip with a kettlebell, rotates halfway, and then I throw it out, I catch and throw it. So I did that repeatedly from the Venice Pier, the south edge of the Venice Pier, 2.7 miles north to the south edge of the Santa Monica Pier. So that's a distance of 2.7 miles. And the weight, did I mention the weight?
Yes, you did. Say it again. Say it again. We need to hear
The
it.
weight is 48 kilograms, which in pounds is actually 105.82 pounds.
But who's counting?
But who's
It matters.
counting? Yeah, every ounce of that.
And how long did it take you?
It took me 5 hours, 37 minutes, 58 seconds with a total of 1,801 throws.
I'm tired just thinking about it. So all of that is amazing, and I can't wait to see it. And it stems from this philosophy that you have in training. And there are lots of trainers out there, but you take training and take it to an entirely new world, including mental, emotional, and physical, and in this very unique way. Can you describe your fitness philosophy and where it stems from?
Sure. Well, I feel that we never, any of us ever get to where we are by ourselves, right? We're either influenced positively or negatively by people along the way. Most times it starts from home, and then it continues. We get into school, and our social circles start to expand, and then we go to work, so we're bombarded with all kinds of influences. But I'd say from a start point, the earliest point, it's parents, right? And I have very loving, caring parents that certainly made it their business to hold me accountable to a certain standard. I got a lot of love, but I also had an understanding that there were things that I could do and things that I couldn't do, and it was made very clear very early. They're old school, you know what I mean? So that certainly gave me a solid foundation, and then moving forward, I got involved in athletics very young, and I was very fortunate to be coached by really good coaches, and by that I mean coaches who cared, who were really determined to help develop not just an athlete, but the character of the person, the character of the child that they were working with. So there's that. Even in school, there's some teachers who I remember by name and by face who could talk about history and somehow make it relate to life. So all of a sudden, you're doing well in history because they made it mean something to you. It wasn't just a bunch of dates that you had to remember to pass the test. So looking back, I'd have to say that who I became when I entered into the field of fitness, or eventually sports and fitness training, is really a culmination of a lot of different influences. One of the most dramatic, though, was as a kid, before I entered into martial arts, I wanted to be Bruce Lee. Like a lot of kids my age, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I was fascinated by the first time. I remember the first movie I saw, my father took me, I'm just looking at this cat, and I'm like, it's like in awe of just the presence, this presence. It wasn't like a Arnold Schwarzenegger. It wasn't about the size. It was just this dynamic presence and focus and cool too, and all of that stuff. And it just spoke to me. And then I early on got involved with martial arts, which, as I found out later on as I studied, wasn't exactly what he studied, but what it did expose me to were very traditional martial artists who wouldn't let the kid take a class, for example, if they failed in school. You know, if they found out that you fought outside the dojo, you get kicked out. Maybe you get a warning, but over that you get kicked out. Because their premise was you're learning something to practice an art form where you develop yourself and you make yourself stronger. This is not something that you use recklessly. If you have to defend yourself, that's one thing. But if you take this and you go and abuse it, they don't want any part of that. Their thing was you want to test it. Well, you test it right here where other people know that stuff. Because if you feel the need to go out there and impress someone who is kind of like taking candy from a baby, right? What have you really proven? Nothing. So, you know, so here you are, 7, 8 years old, and you're sitting in this room, and sometimes they have you sitting on your knees, eyes closed, meditating for 40 minutes at a pop. 7 years old, how many 8-year-old kids can you get them to sit still in their chair for 5 minutes?
I have one, I can't.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So those were the kinds of people who, you know, taught me, mentored me growing up. And I really credit these people to putting me on this path that I just decided, you know, or evolved into really over time.
You would make Bruce Lee very proud.
I even got a painting of him on the wall.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So how does this translate in your training? You work with all sorts of professional athletes across the spectrum. You work with, you know, all sorts of people, really, you know, celebrity trainer, but, you know, really you take people that are doing already an amazing job and you bring them up a notch and they feel it and they experience it. I was just talking to one of your athletes right now and she's noticed a huge difference in the last couple of months working with you. You change everything for people. How does that translate from your history and your evolution into fitness?
Well, you're right. I've been very fortunate to come into contact with a lot of very interesting, accomplished, passionate people who came in the door with a ton.
And they've been fortunate to come into contact with you. Like what?
Well, you ask them, but I'd like to believe that. I mean, yes, they've said that, and I believe it because, you know, the change that you speak about, how do I help them? You know, in my career, there are different stages of understanding, and what I've learned and I think started to hold myself really accountable to is I don't really have the role of, I'm not like a magician and people come to me and I just wave some wand. I have to be present so that I can engage the person that's in front of me, right? And that's step one, because if I'm engaging the person in front of me, then this clipboard that I've been using for the past few years, like in the early part of my career, it just really needs to go out the window because not everybody is, you know, line A, column 1.
Right.
It's just not
you
like
do
that.
3 sets of squats,
Yeah.
15 reps, yeah.
You know, and you know what? I'm not knocking it all together because there's a time for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like you gotta crawl before you walk before you run before you fly. So there was a time for that. But I think that once I started to ask questions that may have challenged the status quo a little bit and then did the work of trying to answer them myself through my experience and then learning from those experiences and seeing what worked and exploring the cause and effect of those things, I started to kind of come into my own. And my own method or style is really about being present for myself, which means I have to hold myself accountable to that in my own training, so that when people come to me and they may sit down and say, well, you know, these are my goals, and I want to lose weight, and I'm carrying a little bit here, and we measure them and all that stuff. But there was a point in my career where I would go through that process with them because I want them to know that I am listening to them and hearing what their goals are. But what's really happening when I'm engaging them and hearing them is I'm feeling this person. I'm feeling this person's energy and really starting to get an understanding as to, okay, first off, what is it about this person that led them into whatever habits that they've gotten themselves accustomed to that have led them to this current emotional and physical state? So they're talking about goals, but what I'm hearing is what's behind the goals.
Right.
It's kind of like the Peanuts, wah, 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 wah,
Yeah.
wah. The teachers are talking, the kids are just hearing sounds, and people are talking to me, and all of a sudden because I'm tuned into something else. And it's not that I don't care about what it is that they have to say that their goals are, but what I'm feeling is, it's much deeper than that. You know what I mean? Because if it's about working out, and anybody can open up a magazine or go online and find YouTube. There's tons of workouts on YouTube. It's not rocket science to get someone stronger or to even get someone more defined. But it is a different thing when you're trying to help change somebody's mindset.
Speaking of which, you did this wonderful fitness feat last week on a plant-based diet. You went exclusively plant-based for 11 weeks during your training?
Yes, 11 out of 12 weeks.
So this is something I've been trying to get him to do for a little while.
Yes,
and I'm very excited. So we've got a plant-strong athlete right here. Show the muscles, all plants. No major, no meat, no animal products.
No powders, no supplements. And I didn't do supplements before anyway. I just don't believe in it.
So you were almost already there. You were just like hanging on to fish a little bit.
That was it. You know, I enjoy sushi. I enjoy some baked salmon, all that stuff. But as far as anything that's animal based, that's really, I haven't had red meat now in 5 years. And you may not, they may not know, but you think you know the reason that I finally made a decision not to do is because a very good friend of mine and client, who happens to also be the executive producer of Forks Over Knives, when we first started training, and he was talking to me about his passion, which at the time was putting together this film. And we were literally sitting right here in the studio when we had this conversation. And, you know, we was talking about the subject matter, and I'm hearing his passion, right? We talk about passion, you can just feel it. So I was listening. And when he started talking about the different doctors whose work was being highlighted in the film, and what they had done with people who had all kinds of illnesses and so forth, you know, being someone who considers himself a steward of this information or this talent to help people get healthy, I felt like, you know, I'm always striving to tweak it. Maybe this is a sign for me that now is the time, because I had already been thinking about eventually maybe pulling the red meat out. I just never made a firm decision about it. So I took that because I do believe that God puts people in our lives for a reason.
Absolutely.
And as well as puts us in other people's lives for a reason.
Absolutely.
And I felt, you know what, if I am continuing to add to my reputation for helping people and using this as the medium for that, then maybe this is my cue to take it to another level. So literally, we had that conversation one day. The next day, that was it. It was done as simple as that. And then the year after, I gave up all poultry, all chicken and turkey and all that stuff. So it's been 5 years since I've had red meat, and 4 years since I've had any kind of chicken and all that stuff.
Okay, what's the difference in your training? Especially when you took out the fish and you did it all full on. I'm just
Okay,
curious
so
if you noticed the
what
difference.
was interesting was I was in the second week, so Brian knew that I was doing it, you know, and if you ask Brian, he'll say, you know, this guy needs a hobby. He's like, can't you do this? You have to throw this for how many miles?
I know.
You need
That's
a hobby.
the genius of you. I love that.
But you know, we've had numerous conversations about, because Brian knows quite a few people, very accomplished plant-based athletes, and for the longest he's like, man, you know, it would be great if if we could feature you and you would do that. And you know, it wasn't that I was resistant to being involved in that, but you know, there's integrity, right? And I know that, well, I still enjoy fish, so I wouldn't really be a good spokesperson for it, because you know, of the people, the majority of people that I've met in the plant-based community, they frown upon that stuff. It's like you're all in or you're all out. So plus the fact that, you know, if I speak on the subject, I want to be able to do it honestly. So, but in the second week of the training, the subject came up again, and I said, you know what? I said, all right, here's what we're gonna do. For the remaining 11 weeks of the training, I'll just give up, you know, the fish, so that we can say that this was a plant-based effort, which is clearly what it is. He lit up. Yeah. So of course, every week when we were training, he's like, so how do you feel? Do you feel any different? He's like, you look great. And I'm like, I feel fantastic. He says, so do you feel stronger? Do you feel this? If I had to sum it up, basically, I can tell you that I felt the same.
Okay.
All right. Now, by me saying that, I want people to understand that I'm not saying that I don't think that this helped, because the fact that I was able to sustain the level of training that was progressively getting more taxing and more grueling week to week, and it didn't waver, it's saying a lot.
Saying a lot.
It's saying
and I spoke to you the morning after this 6 hour, almost 6 hour feed, and you were whistling. Like you had this hum in your voice.
Yeah.
So as someone else that may have achieved that, I mean, I can't imagine the tax that it took on your body to perform that, let alone those 12 weeks of training.
Oh yeah.
So it says a huge amount. I mean, you're getting all of those nutrients to help support that.
Honestly, it didn't really feel any different, you know. And I don't check my weight a lot, because over the years my weight always just kind of wavers, like within a 4-pound range and all that. Out of curiosity, I did check it, because I could feel it. I can usually tell when my weight is a little up and a little down. Generally, the earlier part of the week it might be a little high, because I might have had one more full day of rest, so I'm more hydrated and all that. And then over the course of the week, I'm usually 2 or 3 pounds lower than I am on a Monday. That's just kind of how it is, and it's always been that way. And I don't sweat it, because, you know, as long as I'm functioning, I'm fine. I know that it's not going to be the same number every day. But what I can say is that during this period, my weight was averaging probably 2 or 3 pounds lower. But I can't say that that's because of how I was eating as much as the demand of what I was doing.
Right.
Because the challenge, on the challenge day, the record that I set was 5 hours, 37 minutes, 58 seconds. But each week was progressively increasing. So I haven't done the numbers yet, but if you think about the cumulative work that I was doing every Sunday during the week, you know, that's enough to make your weight come down.
For sure, and I think that says a lot too that you didn't drop a lot of weight. People affiliate a whole plant-based diet sometimes, or I think they used to. It's changing with like weakness and ability to build.
I'm going to be very honest. Early, much earlier in my career, you could put me in the same category of those people
all of us.
who definitely bought into the notion that it was impossible to sustain it. Because most times when you did look at people who were plant-based, their body types they always looked a little bit thinner. You know what I mean? So I definitely at one time, a very long time ago, thought the same.
Yeah.
But clearly that's not the case because, like I said, I haven't eaten red meat or any poultry in years.
Yeah.
And it hasn't stopped me. I have consistently, slowly, but steadily gotten a little bit stronger, and a little bit stronger, and a little bit stronger. And I just turned 44.
You're crushing it.
Yeah.
44.
Yeah. So it's not over at 40.
The world doesn't end.
No, not at all.
You don't turn into a weakling.
Not at all.
So, okay, so you did this amazing feat, and with a goal in mind, tell us about your incredible...
So you mentioned Free Flow Do, right? So
tell us if you want to give tell them a little bit
about Free Flow Do?
It's
Okay.
so cool.
So I smile the way I almost like I smile about my daughters, right? Because Free Flow Do, in some ways, is like another child, that had to be nurtured, that I had to protect from, the naysayers, that I had to protect even when I was developing it before I actually went public with the fact that I was creating something. This is back when I was living in New York and I worked at Equinox Fitness Clubs, and for years people just saw me doing what looked like just some craziness on the treadmills and not knowing that I was actually developing something. I used to be in the club at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning with a tripod set up with the old camera before digital became the thing, with the little high tapes and recording my stuff and up and down these 13 treadmills, working up a sweat and all that, changing the angle, writing notes, with my music on, with the music off. I mean, it would just, the only lights in the place was that. And then like an hour and a half later, then the maintenance people came in. Now that's early because the maintenance people are there before anybody gets in. And that went on for a whole 3-month period when I was developing it. Anyway, so that was the beginning of Free Flow Do, which was really my attempt to work on my footwork for boxing, because I had gotten into some boxing because 4 years or so into training, I was really missing martial arts, and I went and was working with a kickboxer. And then he eventually left, so I started doing some boxing and fell in love with everything about it, the movement, its defense. But the footwork seemed to be creating a little bit of a challenge for me. I just couldn't figure it out, and being extremely competitive with myself just a little bit.
6 hours tossing 106 pounds now.
Yeah, I needed, that's a pinch, right? Okay, we saw that. I had to figure it out. So I did everything that the boxers would do, jump and rope, but it just wasn't processing it for me to take advantage of what I was seeing. And then that really challenged me now as a fitness professional, trainer, coach, to figure out how to help this person improve, help this athlete improve, being me. And that led to the early steps of Free Flow Do, where I was moving, doing footwork and all that stuff. And the very next time that I had gone to the boxing gym, it was like someone turned on the lights. I didn't go from like being dominated to being like the king of the gym. It wasn't anything like that, not like a Rocky movie. But what it did show me was that in a very little span of time, that there was a dramatic difference in how the whole experience felt to me and what I was able to see.
So for those people out there that can't see what Free Flow Do is, can you just in 2 sentences explain, I know that's probably impossible, but to explain what it is actually, what you do, what is it?
Okay, so the actual action of Free Flow Do is, it takes place on a platform that I designed called the launch pads, that are manufactured by this company, Woodway. They're known as like the Ferraris, the BMW M5. I say that because that's my favorite car, even though I don't own one, but I follow it. It's like the M series, the M5, a high performance machine of treadmills. And I had shopped the concept to every treadmill company. No one wanted to touch it except them. And so there you have it. So it takes place on this, and so obviously there's no display panel, no rail, so it looks like a treadmill except for the fact that you can't hold on to anything. It looks more like something out of the Jetsons.
Yeah, it does.
So,
it does, right? Yeah.
So what we're doing is, unlike running on a treadmill, you're never just moving in a straight line. Everything about Free Flow Do is everything, open space, right? Just like in dance, just like in martial arts, just like in swimming, just like in painting, right? Just like in singing, playing music, it's open. And when I was in the early stages of developing Free Flow Do, when I was still on treadmills, the more free I was feeling, the more I was starting to feel like a caged bird. So I started to do sketches, and because when I was younger, I went to Brooklyn Tech and Penn State, I was actually studying civil engineering before I ended up in fitness. I sketched out exactly what I thought was the dream machine for Free Flow Do. And that really was the beginning of it. Woodway came on board and it just like catapulted. So like I said, basically there's movement and there's a progression of movement. Most people think that like when an athlete just goes into their turns, they just turn, but even athletes make some very, very costly mistakes because of flawed movement mechanics, right? And athletes are really adept at compensating for mechanical errors, but sometimes the mechanical, the compensation adjustment actually can set the stage for some serious problems.
Injuries, long-term injuries. How many athletes have long-term injuries?
Season-ending career.
Right.
Career-ending
yeah.
injuries.
Yeah.
So the mechanics involved with Free Flow Do, when people are moving on the surface and, for example, have to change direction, first of all, there's no such thing as pivot. Because think about it, if you played soccer like that young lady that you met a little while ago, and it's a muddy field and they've got cleats and those things dig into the sand, and if she just thrusts her body in that direction and the foot doesn't move, well, now you're generating a lot of torsion force around an ankle that's not designed to rotate, around a knee that's a hinge joint, so you know that's not designed to rotate. So you start twisting a joint that's only designed to do this, you got a problem. You have a big problem.
Everyone should have on their bucket list a session with this guy because he will change and rock your world. So that was your first child, and now you're trying to give birth to your second child.
And what interesting
or
enough,
your second non-child.
My second non-child.
Yeah.
What's interesting is now that Free Flow Do has evolved and moving out from New York to California and having my own studio and really expanding it, because when you're under another house, under another roof, you can only go but so far, you know what I mean? And even for my own growth, I teach about embrace letting go. Mm-hmm. I needed to embrace letting go of the familiarity of where I was and some really wonderful people that I had the privilege of working with, but there was a level of comfort that I knew in the long term would just stifle my growth. So in order to do Free Flow Do justice, I knew I needed to move. And some people say, well, did you have to move all the way to California? Did you just go down the block? But I felt like I needed a dramatic shift. And because Southern California is kind of like known as like the mecca for fitness, and the elements are more cooperative because, out here it's much more of a lifestyle in that it's 365 days a year. Sure. You might get 3 days of rain. Whereas on the East Coast, it can be very seasonal. Sometimes people get real dormant in the wintertime, and then they just kind of pop up for the resolution season, and then they pop up again just before the summer. So I felt that to give it a shot, maybe go somewhere that might get quicker traction. So that was the reason that I came out this way. But so how this new concept came about is that as people started to become more aware of the system, especially when you have some high-profile people, whether it's in entertainment even being in sports, started to be interviewed and spoken about, and talking about their training, their off-season training, what it started to really do is create a lot of interest from other fitness professionals, strength and conditioning coaches, and not just in the US. I mean, I was getting emails sometimes in the morning from people from Australia, from London, so when are you bringing Free Flow Do here? And then of course some of the challenges, especially when you're doing something new, people will tend to focus on, unfortunately, some of the things that you really shouldn't be focusing on if you're about growth, right? When you really are about personal growth, it doesn't really matter. You go to it, and that's what passionate people do. People who aren't quite there yet, they're focusing more on the barriers to entry. The time commitment to get licensed to teach Free Flow Do, the price point of the launch pads. So to me, I look at it as like, well, what's more costly to your career, to what you're offering your clients? Is it more practical to keep on giving them the same stuff, or to just kind of inch your way along? Or is it more exciting for you as well as the clients who are going to pick up on your excitement to really dive in head first and bring something that's dramatically different? You know what I mean?
The latter, of course.
Yeah, so you would think so, but that's not always the case.
Right.
So after years of...
Some people are scared of that too.
Most people
it's pushing past comfort.
Most people are. Listen, even when you're passionate, it doesn't mean you're not scared. When I did this thing on Sunday, and even when these clips start to get out and all that, there's people who are going to, because of how it was executed, you would think that I was cool the whole time. but I was dealing with my battles. There were things that were going on. There were all kinds of questions that were asked. So we all face up. We're all confronted with the fears. I think what separates the ones who are very complacent to the handful of people that really either go after their dreams or realize their dreams is some people just put a little bit more time into dealing with those fears, into facing the fears. That's it. You know? Yeah, sometimes people just get lucky, but if they just got lucky, eventually they get exposed.
I have to say that's what I experienced in the few times that I've worked with you. I like those moments where you're like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and you force them to face, you forced me to face that, and it's in that
well,
moment.
I didn't really force you. You see, that's the thing. Remember we talk about when people come to you with energy? I didn't force you to do anything. You wanted to do it. You felt the fear, but you want to grow more than you deal with, than you stand down to fear.
Yeah.
And because you're more committed to your personal growth than you are to standing down to fear, that's the only reason I was able to take you further. If you decided in that moment that you didn't want to go there, I couldn't take you there. You can't force people into that place. You can only come up with creative ways to pose the question and then be skilled in how to get them through it once you've earned their trust to answer this question with you and go down this deep, dark place that they don't know because they've been sweeping it under the rug for who knows how many years. That's all that is. So I don't force people to do anything. I just make it available. And the ones who are willing to go through it are the ones who have a different type of experience. Let me tell you, I've had some professional athletes who've come in and not come back. And you would think, oh, well, a professional athlete, they'll definitely get it. And sometimes people look at the websites like, oh, I got to be a pro. There's a lot of pro athletes that have come here and not come back. Sometimes people can get to a very high level without having, because maybe they just have a certain amount of natural ability. But then when it comes to the real tests, that natural ability only gets you so far. You know, I tell young athletes all the time, including my younger daughter who was aspiring to play D1 volleyball. I would rather take a team that has marginal or no talent, but is a hard-working team, they've got good work ethic and they're respectful, than a team of naturally talented, gifted kids.
Right.
Because those kids, they're going to reach a point where it's just not going to be enough. Right. But the ones who have the work ethic and have the discipline, you can teach them anything. And it's just a matter of time. I use Michael Jordan, for example, as an example for my daughter all the time. He got cut from his high school team. He got cut from his high school team. That means he didn't cut it.
Right.
And because of how he responded to being cut, it formed the basis for how he would spend the rest of his time in basketball. He worked harder. Even after winning his first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth championship, he was still the first one in and the last one out. Because it was so devastating to him to get cut as a kid that summer he rededicated himself and he put more work into it. And because of how he changed his mindset, instead of begging the coach to get him back on, because he changed his mindset, he was able to break through those barriers and become now a legend in the sport. Had he just gotten depressed and his parents just, said, it's okay.
Play another sport.
Not everybody is going to be good at basketball, but maybe just said, you know what, if you want it, then go work for it. Had none of that happened, who would know who Michael Jordan is?
See why I call him a guru? So tell us about this new baby. Tell us about this project. I want you to tell me.
Well, unfortunately, is all I can say because I am basically, I created, the company, as you know, is called Performance Minded. I started a campaign with Indiegogo, Indiegogo.com, which I just launched this week, which is a crowdfunding platform. Crowdfunding platforms are basically opportunities for artists, entrepreneurs, creative people to raise money for their projects. Maybe it's writing a book, maybe it's finishing a short film or so forth. And what they do is you create a campaign message and you put it out there and you tap into your social network or the social work of your friends and all that, family, and if the subject matter or your mission or your goal is something that speaks to people, and out of the kindness of strangers, they can donate to your campaign. Sometimes people do it for nothing. Sometimes campaigns will offer like a perk or a reward, like it could be anything from a mug to t-shirts, or if you have a product already made, it might even be the product at like a cheaper price before it goes to market, that kind of thing. Which I think is phenomenal because when you try to do things the conventional way, you run into the same kinds of challenges. Just that fact that they have that platform, somebody said, you know what, there's too many passionate people in the world to have to depend on an investor writing a check. Now, investors are great, they help people out, but sometimes they don't.
Sometimes I do.
Sometimes they don't. It's right. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So what happens to the visionary?
Right.
What happens to that person with a passion? What
Right.
happens to the person who has a message and a gift to share with people? So they're supposed to just go quietly into the night? No. This now is giving people an opportunity. So I can say what my message is. In this case, it's a product that's inspired by Free Flow. It's funny because Free Flow Do was inspired by my experience as a martial artist, as an athlete growing up. That led to the development of Free Flow Do, right? Cause and effect, trying to troubleshoot an issue. So now you have years of Free Flow Do, which have completely changed and enhanced my whole approach to training myself as well as my clients. And because of having people who are high profile, because now they're out in the news and people are hearing about Free Flow Do, but they can't access it, to me, okay, now we've got a problem. And that's what most new businesses are, most new technologies. And in the business world, it's called a disruptive technology. They use it. The disruptive technology is something, in essence, that kind of changes how things are done, right? It disrupts the status quo. So for me, I had to disrupt the normal perception of what Free Flow Do is, which is just done by this guy somewhere in some little box somewhere in Southern California that only people who are on the West Coast have access to, besides some of my clients who actually be flying from time to time to do it. But that's not everybody.
Yeah.
So what I decided was there needed to be a way to translate this training philosophy out there, because as I entered my 40s, I knew that, okay, the next 10 years, I got to do it a little differently. I love the people that I work with. Part of having an immediate audience for this stuff has also been helpful in helping me to develop it and refine it. But I know that this stuff is just too good in how it helps people to just remain for the people that I work with. So that inspired me to come up with a way to communicate the training, the philosophy, the benefits of Free Flow Do in a non-launch pad based format, in more of a mass market friendly format. And once I had set my mind on that, it was like a river of ideas, and it took, I want to say it took no time, because I've been developing it now like about 2.5 years, but when it took no time. I simply referred to the shifting gears.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, this needs to happen, and then it was really just
It's an easy translation.
right.
Yeah.
You had a question, people had a hard time accessing it. The answer is, how do I make it accessible? So in answering the question, the product concept came to be, and literally driving to Home Depot, and I went up and down the aisles, and I took little different things off the shelf to try to create little mock-ups of what this product will do, so that I can test it. When I was developing Free Flow Do, I had treadmills, and treadmills were the beginning of what Free Flow Do became.
Right.
But it's not based on any. This is from the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go.
That abstract.
Yeah. So I had to go find things to try to simulate what the product. Now I had already designed it. I had sketches and all that stuff, but I didn't have a physical product. So I basically, like I said, I got a whole bunch of things from Home Depot to create what looks very close to this thing. And as a result, I actually have a manual of over 100 exercises for a product that doesn't exist.
Oh, how many people can
For
say
a product that doesn't exist.
So the Indiegogo campaign
is so that I can raise money to have the prototypes made and get the legal protection, the patents and trademarks and everything associated with it. And there's actually one nice little piece to the story, which is since the agreement hasn't formalized yet, but the pieces are in play, I have a pending co-branding relationship with the single largest fitness equipment manufacturer in the world, who wants to co-brand the training and education component of this product. So Performance Minded will build a product and sell it, and this company that's very renowned for their science and their research, they want all, and actually initially they wanted to buy the product, but I'm not ready to retire, so.
Not yet.
Yeah, they wanted it. But,
No, you have to.
but it's cool, we're happy to do this, but now I need to get this critical piece done.
You do.
And that's the purpose of the crowdfunding campaign, and I'm very, very fortunate to have a nice little group of people who have helped me evolve in my career as I've helped them in their lives, who are very supportive and have jumped on board to help me to get the program going in the form of donations, So whether it's a $30 t-shirt or a more substantial, generous offer, it all helps. It all helps. and ultimately will help me help a lot of people.
Yes,
You
people
know,
need to see this
The
product.
consumer and fitness professionals. I mean, a lot of what I'm passionate about is also being mentored to other fitness professionals. You know, because I love being creative, and there's nothing cooler when you're working with people, whether you're a coach or a trainer, than to have some tools that really spark your creativity.
Right.
And I know that this
Absolutely.
industry is always looking for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you huge, tremendous success, and I
Thank
cannot
you.
wait to see this in everybody's home and every
Thank you
gym,
very much.
and
Well,
I know it'll
when it's
transform
out,
everything.
I'm gonna bring you back and
yeah.
and we'll do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
You're
right.
a guru.
Thank you very much.
Keep
Thank
up
you.
your brilliance.
Thank you. I appreciate it.